Dr. Elena Vasquez adjusted her neural interface headset for the third time, her hands trembling slightly as she reviewed the xenolinguistics data streaming across her augmented reality display. The Meridian Research Complex, built into the cliffs of New Geneva, buzzed with anticipation. After 18 months of long-distance communication with the Kithaeron delegation, today marked the first face-to-face diplomatic meeting between their species. Elena had spent her career studying theoretical alien languages, never imagining she'd become the primary translator for humanity's first meaningful interstellar contact. The Kithaeron's had reached out after detecting Earth's quantum broadcasts, proposing a cultural and scientific exchange. What made them unique wasn't just their advanced biotechnology, but their empathic abilities. They could sense emotional resonance through bioelectric fields. The transport craft landed silently on the facility's platform, its organic curves unlike any human technology. Elena watched through the observation deck as the airlock cycled, her heart racing. The first figure to emerge was tall and graceful, with deep bronze skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Intricate bioluminescent patterns traced along their arms and neck, pulsing gently like a living constellation. Ambassador Zathara approaches, announced Director Chen through the COM system. Dr. Vasquez, you're cleared for initial contact. Elena made her way to the reception chamber, a space designed to be culturally neutral. Warm lighting, flowing water features, and living walls of earth plants mixed with carefully cultivated Kithaeron flora that had arrived in their advance shipments. The air itself felt different, charged with possibility. Zathara entered with fluid movements that seemed to dance rather than walk. Their eyes a deep violet that shifted like storm clouds met Elena's across the room. For a moment, time seemed suspended. The ambassador's bioluminescent patterns brightened, creating waves of soft blue-green light across their skin. Dr. Vasquez, Zathara said, their voice a melodic harmony that seemed to resonate in Elena's chest. Your emotional resonance. It's remarkable. I have never encountered such intensity in first contact protocols. Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks. The Kithaeron's empathic abilities were well documented, but experiencing it firsthand was overwhelming. Ambassador, welcome to Earth. I apologize if my nervousness is disruptive. Nervousness? Zathara tilted their head, the light patterns shifting to a warm gold. I sense anticipation, curiosity, and something else. Something beautiful and complex. They stepped closer, their presence both alien and strangely familiar. Tell me, Dr. Vasquez, do all humans carry such vibrant emotional symphonies within them? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications neither fully understood yet. 3 weeks into the cultural exchange, Elena found herself spending increasingly long hours with Zathara, ostensibly working on communication protocols but often venturing into deeper philosophical discussions. The ambassador had been assigned quarters in the research complex's east wing, and their living space had been transformed into something that looked like a garden from an alien dream. Bioluminescent plants created shifting patterns of light across the walls. Your species fascinates me, Zathara said during one of their evening sessions, their long fingers tracing complex equations in the air using holographic displays. You compartmentalize emotions, try to separate logic from feeling. For us, they are inseparable, like trying to separate light from color. Elena watched the mathematical poetry flowing from Zathara's gestures, finding herself drawn not just to the alien concepts but to the graceful movements of their hands. Sometimes I think our logic is just fear dressed up in fancy clothes, she admitted. We're terrified of making decisions based on how we feel. And yet, Zathara turned to face her, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing in slow, hypnotic waves. Your emotional resonance is what drew my people to yours across the vastness of space. Not your technology or your achievements, but the sheer intensity of human feeling broadcasting into the cosmos. That night, Elena lay awake in her quarters, staring at the ceiling. She'd studied 17 different theoretical alien communication systems, but nothing had prepared her for the way Zathara's presence seemed to harmonize with something deep inside her. It was more than professional fascination. There was a connection she couldn't name or categorize. The breakthrough came during a routine translation session. They were working on emotional concepts that had no direct human equivalent when Zathara suddenly went very still, their patterns dimming to almost nothing. What is it? Elena asked, concerned. I need to be careful, Zathara said quietly. My people's empathic abilities create bonds, sometimes without conscious intention. When I'm with you, your emotional patterns begin to synchronize with mine. It's unprecedented. Elena felt her pulse quicken. Is that dangerous? Not dangerous. Zathara's patterns flared briefly, a cascade of warm colors. But irreversible. Once formed, empathic bonds between our species become permanent. It would mean, they paused, seeming to struggle with the words. It would mean I could never return to my home world without experiencing the pain of separation. From you. The revelation hung between them like a challenge. Elena realized she was facing a choice that could change both their lives forever, and the rational part of her mind that had always guided her decisions was suddenly, powerfully silent. What if, she said carefully, what if I don't want you to return home? The confession changed everything between them. Over the following days, Elena found herself pulled into Zathara's world of emotion as language, learning to communicate through feeling as much as words. The ambassador taught her meditation techniques that allowed her to sense the emotional undercurrents in their conversations: fear, hope, desire, and something deeper that had no name in either language. But their growing connection hadn't gone unnoticed. Director Chen called Elena into his office on a gray morning when the research complex felt particularly sterile and cold. Dr. Vasquez, I need to discuss your professional boundaries with the Kitharan delegation, Chen began, his expression carefully neutral. There are concerns about the nature of your interactions with Ambassador Zathara. Elena felt defensive. Anger flare in her chest. My work with the ambassador has resulted in breakthroughs in xenolinguistic theory that will advance the field by decades. What exactly are you concerned about? The psychological evaluations suggest you're becoming emotionally compromised. Chen slid a datapad across his desk. The Kitharan's empathic abilities may be influencing your judgment in ways you're not aware of. We're recommending you transition to a supervisory role and let Dr. Martinez take over direct contact. The suggestion hit Elena like a physical blow. The thought of being separated from Zathara, of having someone else interpret their communications, felt unbearable. You're making a mistake, Director. The bond we've formed isn't a compromise, it's the key to true understanding between our species. That's exactly what I'm worried about, Chen replied. You're talking about bonds, Elena. You're a scientist, not a diplomat. Your job is to translate, not to connect. That evening, Elena found Zathara in their garden quarters. The bioluminescent plants dim and subdued. The ambassador's own patterns were muted, cycling through deep purples and blues. You're upset, Elena said, settling beside them on the living furniture that molded itself to her form. I can feel your distress, Zathara replied. They want to separate us. They think you're compromising my judgment. Zathara's patterns flared suddenly, bright and fierce. They don't understand that judgment without emotion is just calculation. What we have created together, this resonance, it's not a compromise of your abilities. It's an evolution of them. Elena reached out tentatively, her fingers brushing against Zathara's hand. The contact sent waves of sensation through both of them, not just physical, but emotional, a perfect harmony of feeling that made her gasp. I've never experienced anything like this, she whispered. Nor have I. Zathara's voice was thick with emotion. In my world, empathic bonds are sacred, but they're also rare. To find resonance with someone from another species, their patterns shifted to brilliant golds and whites. It's miraculous. Elena made her decision in that moment, understanding, finally, that some connections transcend logic, protocol, and fear. The next morning brought crisis. Elena arrived at the research complex to find security teams cordoning off the East Wing and Director Chen in heated discussion with officials from the colonial administration. Through the chaos, she caught fragments of conversation: potential security breach, unknown alien influence, and immediate quarantine protocols. What's happening? Elena demanded, pushing through the crowd towards Zathara's quarters. Dr. Vasquez, step back. Security Chief Rodriguez intercepted her. We've detected unusual energy readings from the ambassador's quarters. Until we can determine if there's a threat, there's no threat. Elena's voice carried more force than she'd ever used with a superior officer. Those are empathic resonance patterns. You're detecting the bond between us. Director Chen approached, his expression grim. Elena, we've received communication from the Kitharan High Council. They're expressing concern about Ambassador Zathara's attachment to a human. Apparently, this kind of cross-species bonding violates their protocols as well. Elena felt the world shift beneath her feet. What are they saying? They want to Recall the ambassador immediately. And our government is inclined to agree. This exchange was supposed to be about scientific cooperation, not whatever this has become. Through the transparent aluminum barriers, Elena could see Zathara in their quarters, the bioluminescent patterns across their skin cycling rapidly through colors she now recognized as distress, anger, and deep sadness. The ambassador was pacing, their elegant movements sharp with agitation. "You can't separate us," Elena said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "The empathic bond we've formed, it's not just personal. It's opened up entirely. New possibilities for interspecies communication. We're on the verge of breakthroughs that could revolutionize how different civilizations interact. Or it could be a form of alien influence that we don't understand," Chen countered. "Elena, I've known you for 5 years. You've always been logical, methodical, cautious. This person you've become emotional, impulsive, defying direct orders. That's not you." Elena looked at her reflection in the security barrier's surface and saw a woman she barely recognized. Her eyes were brighter, her posture more confident, her entire presence somehow more alive than it had ever been. "You're right," she said quietly. "This isn't who I was. But maybe who I was wasn't who I was meant to be." She turned to face the assembled officials, her decision crystallizing. "I'm resigning my position, effective immediately. If you want to break the bond between Zathara and me, you'll have to do it over my dead body." The silence that followed was broken by a sound none of them had heard before, Zathara's voice, somehow reaching them through the barriers, speaking in harmonics that bypassed language entirely and communicated pure emotion. It was a song of determination, of love, and of defiance that made every human in the corridor stop and listen. The revolution had begun. 6 months later, Elena stood on the observation deck of the independent research vessel Harmony, watching the blue-green swirl of Kithra Prime grow larger in the viewport. The ship was a marvel of combined human and Kithran technology, its biomechanical systems responding to both logical commands and emotional intent. Beside her, Zathara's patterns were brilliant with anticipation and nervousness. Their bond had only grown stronger since leaving Earth, creating a form of communication that transcended both their species' previous limitations. Elena had learned to feel emotions as colors and harmonics, while Zathara had discovered the power of human logical analysis enhanced by emotional intelligence. "Are you ready for this?" Elena asked, though she could already sense the answer through their connection. "We're ready," Zathara corrected, their hand finding hers. "That's what they don't understand. We're not to individuals anymore. We're something new." The journey to this moment had been turbulent. Both Earth's government and the Kithran High Council had initially condemned their bond, viewing it as a violation of diplomatic protocol. But other voices had begun to join their scientists, philosophers, and visionaries from both worlds who recognized that Elena and Zathara represented evolution in action. The independent research vessel had been funded by a coalition of progressive groups from multiple species, designed to study the implications of empathic bonding between different civilizations. Elena and Zathara were no longer just translator and ambassador. They were the first successful example of true interspecies synthesis. "Incoming transmission from Kithra Prime," announced Arya, the ship's hybrid AI that spoke in harmonics, as well as words. "The Progressive Council is requesting immediate audience upon your arrival." Elena smiled, feeling Zathara's excitement pulse through their bond. The Progressive Council was a faction of younger Kithrans who believed that evolution required breaking old boundaries, not preserving them. They saw Elena and Zathara's bond as proof that the future belonged to those willing to transcend the limitations of single-species thinking. "Tell them we'll be honored to meet with them," Elena replied, then turned to the communication station where Dr. Martinez, who had eventually joined their cause, was monitoring transmissions from Earth. "Any word from the colonial administration?" she asked. Martinez grinned. "Actually, yes. Director Chen sends his reluctant congratulations. Apparently, the preliminary data from your bonding research has impressed some very important people. There's talk of establishing a formal interspecies empathic studies program." Elena laughed, a sound that harmonized perfectly with Zathara's own musical expression of joy. "Sometimes the best way to change minds is to prove them wrong with results they can't ignore." As Kithra Prime filled their vision, a world where bioluminescent cities grew like living organisms across continents of flowing grasslands, Elena reflected on how much had changed. She had begun this journey as a xenolinguist trying to build bridges between species through words. Now she was living proof that some connections transcended language entirely. "What do you think comes next?" she asked Zathara as they prepared for landing. Zathara's patterns shifted to colors Elena had learned meant hope mixed with infinite possibility. "We show them that love isn't a weakness or a compromise," they said. "We show them its evolution." The ship touched down on Kithara Prime, and Elena stepped into a new world where the impossible had become inevitable.